this is a real easy situation to get into. You could be, like job and everything one day, the next day you could have nothing, you could be sleeping on the street like me.
Basically, there's no help and the situation is getting worse. They're pushing people in the corners when people are making a lot of money at Madison Square Garden, Yankee Stadium, and there's no help for the homeless.
No longer are there dreams of prosperity or opportunities for a better life. New York City is now sinking into the worst homelessness crisis the history of the United States has ever witnessed. The number of homeless people in this city has now surpassed the population of a small town. What is even more concerning is that they are occupying streets that were once symbols of prosperity. Although local authorities have made efforts, the situation remains out of control, and even the best equipped police force is gradually becoming powerless against this crisis. In today's video, we will take you to the heart of the homelessness crisis in New York, where the collapse is not limited to remote areas, but is spreading to neighborhoods that were once symbols of the city's strength and prosperity. Don't think that you will be safe from this crisis, because if New York cannot cope with this situation, can other cities withstand this wave of crisis? New York City is the heart, once vibrant, full of life and opportunities of America. But that heart is breaking beat by beat. Right in the middle of Fifth Avenue, beneath the dazzling lights and luxury stores, hundreds of thousands of people still live with their hearts beating. But their presence has been erased and forgotten. According to statistics as of April 2025, more than 108,000 people sleep in the city's shelters. In addition, there are thousands of people huddled under bus stations, subway stations, and bridges, and over 200,000 others who are homeless, having to sleep at friends' or acquaintances' places. A life wrapped in misery, transience, and uncertainty. In total, more than 350,000 New York residents do not have a proper roof over their heads, a number that exceeds the entire population of many other major cities. Even more heartbreaking is knowing that nearly 70% of the people in the shelter system are families, including over 37,000 children. This means that 1 in 8 children you encounter on the streets of New York are homeless. Those children go to school with a hastily packed backpack from the church, have lunch with donated food, and study by flashlight under the car bench. They are not allowed to have a childhood or a fulfilling future because they are inadvertently caught in the cycle of poverty production. So, what is really the boundary between the homeless and the rest of society? The answer is still vague. It can be a medical debt, a period of unemployment, or a sudden spike in bills. Sometimes, just one incident is enough to throw a person from the rooftop to the street, without any warning or even time to prepare. New York used to be a place where people came to start over, to build a life from scratch. But now, right in that very place, we are witnessing people who once worked, paid taxes, and raised children, sliding down into the abyss from which nothing can pull them back up anymore. And if New York, the financial, cultural, and hopeful center of America, can no longer keep a roof over the heads of its most decent citizens, then what awaits the rest of this country? Perhaps this is the golden moment for us to deeply reconsider the issue before everything gradually becomes too late. There are places in this city that, although not marked by warning signs on the map, anyone who has lived in New York for a long time implicitly understands: don't step in after 8 p.m. and if possible, don't step in alone. It's not because of crime, not necessarily because of violence, but because these neighborhoods, from parts of Lower Manhattan, the corners of the Bronx, Roosevelt Avenue, to even the old station area around Penn Station, have become invisible, forbidden zones. Not for tourists, not for safe dreams. And it seems, no longer for the law either. In those areas, the homeless set up tents right on the sidewalks, share meals from leftover food thrown in the trash, or huddle under the awnings of convenience stores to escape the sun and rain. But what makes people heartbroken is not the living conditions, but the absolute feeling of abandonment that those people endure every day. It won't be hard to spot a veteran sitting quietly at the 145th Street subway station. Those who once endured the harsh days on the battlefield of the Gulf, who learned to survive in the most extreme conditions, now have to apply those very survival skills to struggle on the streets of New York, not in a foreign land, but right on the soil of their homeland. No longer the brilliant light of dreams, only darkness remains, the sound of wind whistling through makeshift roofs, and the feeling that one is no longer a part of this city. This situation creates a dangerous spiral, not only for the homeless, but also for the surrounding community. Families living nearby no longer dare to let their children go to school alone. Shops close early, businesses relocate, and the trust between the people and the city is gradually eroded. We are not afraid of them. We fear a system that has abandoned both them and us. Is this a temporary impotence or evidence of a collapse that has quietly begun long ago? And if a city like New York starts leaving blank spaces on its own map, can we still call it a strong and intact society? In the past, JFK was the starting point of dreams. It is the place where millions of people embrace their dreams for the first time flying to America. Now, the echoes of footsteps in the terminal are no longer the sound of international tourists' shoes, but the sound of the slowly shattering hopes of those who have nowhere else to go. If you step into the corridor connecting the air train and Terminal 5, you will see them. The homeless residents sprawled everywhere, with their numbers increasing each day. To strangers, they look like passengers taking a nap during a long layover. But for the staff here, everyone knows, this is not waiting for the next flight. This is their unofficial home. JFK Airport, the gateway to America, has now also become a makeshift shelter for dozens of homeless people each day. They do not break the law or do anything wrong. They simply stay because it is safer than the streets, cleaner than the subway station, and less likely to be chased away than public parks. The problem is, JFK was never designed to be a place of residence. No bed, no bathroom, no hot meals or on-site medical staff. And even though there is a daily welfare sweep, whereby die Rauf and Stur coordinated by the Port Authority Police and the charity organisation Urban Pathways, no one knows exactly how many people are actually living here. There is no clear number, no long-term plan, only a temporary existence, day after day. Where do they come from? From Jamaica Station, from the last subway cars at night. They have lived in this city for decades. They used to have jobs. Some had served in the military. Some were once the main hotel staff at JFK itself, before losing their jobs due to the pandemic. And now, they return, not to work, but to pray for a place to stay overnight without being kicked out. Airport police can't do much because the airport is a public space. They only intervene when there is violence. Support staff do not have enough resources to take anyone anywhere, and most New Yorkers don't even know this is happening. But for those who once knew JFK as the gateway to the world, the emptiness here is no longer just a sad image. It is a sign of a rift in the relationship between this city and its most vulnerable citizens. The airport was once a symbol of takeoff, of hope. Now, it has become the final stop for those who have nowhere else to go. And in a modern society, is there anything more cruel than the very place that welcomes the world being the one that can no longer hold on to its own? If JFK, the heart of international tourism in the United States, is gradually becoming so silent and cold, then how many more airports, train stations and other corners are becoming these unintended shelters? Are we living in a city, or just trying to survive in the gaps that the system has forgotten? In New York, sometimes tragedy doesn't start with a fire, an accident, or a night of violence. It starts with a text message. Rent will increase starting next month. A line of text, a number, and then everything that was once stable suddenly became incredibly fragile. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan exceeded $4,000 per month in 2025. In other boroughs like Brooklyn or Queens, the numbers aren't much lower either. It's no longer just the story of young graduates or immigrant families. Now, even those who have lived their entire lives in New York are being caught in the inescapable whirlpool of the affordable housing crisis. The housing crisis in New York is no longer a market issue. It has become a moral issue. The city continues to build. New apartment buildings are popping up like mushrooms, filled with amenities, indoor pools, yoga rooms, rooftop bars. But they are not for the local residents. NYC has lost 1.1 million affordable homes. So what about the remaining homes? Completely beyond the financial reach of most local residents. Meanwhile, thousands of affordable apartments are abandoned, waiting for redevelopment, or are in the hands of investors who do not live here. Those who still live in their apartments today may feel that this crisis is very distant. But that distance is actually just another cycle of rising home prices, or an illness not covered by insurance. New York once prided itself on being the city where anyone can find a home, as long as you work hard. New York once prided itself on being the city where anyone can find a home, as long as you work hard. But today, that saying is becoming a charming lie. And when the richest city in America can't even provide the minimum housing for its middle-class residents, who is truly safe from this wave of crisis? People often think that the most brutal aspect of homelessness is the lack of food, lack of beds, lack of shelter. But for many people living among the frigid streets of New York, the pain does not lie in the physical realm, but in the fact that no one remembers who they are. At an impromptu mental health support center in Harlem, a 57-year-old man who was once a hospital nurse and now lives in a tent behind a parking lot near the Williamsburg Bridge shared, "I no longer feel like a person." The issue of mental health within the homeless community is quietly becoming a parallel pandemic in New York. In a city that is always awake, always moving, always lit up, there are tens of thousands of people living in a state of internal silence. Not because they have lost hope, but because they are no longer considered part of the community. For homeless children, this is even more serious. A report from the city's public school system states, more than 146,000 students experienced homelessness during the 2023 to 2024 school year. It's not just a lack of a place to sleep. It's a lack of a safe space to grow. Those children come to class with tired eyes, interrupted sleep, and a backpack not filled with books, but with personal belongings, because tonight they are not sure where they will sleep. At the shelters, the children learn to remain silent when teased, learn not to share about their home, learn to deny instability as if it were inevitable. No one teaches those children how to dream. And when a child cannot dream, we're not only losing a future citizen, but also quietly stifling the hope of a generation. For the elderly, psychological decline is even more dangerous because they carry within them a past, a vision of a once better America. Mental health cannot be measured by body temperature or blood tests, but it manifests in every head that bows in avoidance, every gaze that no longer looks straight ahead, every footstep dragged in uncertainty. New York can provide skyscrapers, billion-dollar redevelopment projects, and flashy promotional campaigns. But if those who once paid taxes, raised children, and upheld the best values of this city are quietly crumbling from within, then what is truly left? Can a society be called civilized if it allows the wounds of the soul to continue shattering in silence? Or one day, those unspoken cries will become the only echo left in the heart of this city? There was a time when New York was not only famous for its skyscrapers, but also for the outstretched hands that quietly offered support. That was a time when the church in each neighborhood had a hot meal every Sunday evening. It was a time when the community center knew the names of every family around. It was when the elderly could go to the library, not just to read books, but to be asked about. But now, those fragile bonds, more delicate than one could imagine, are slowly breaking. A community centre that used to stay open until 9 p.m. now closes at 5 p.m. due to insufficient budget to maintain staff. A non-profit organisation specialising in helping the homeless register for assistance programmes has been dissolved due to funding cuts. The lifelines that once served as a lifebuoy for so many are now gradually disappearing. The homelessness crisis does not stem solely from a lack of housing, but from the complete breakdown of the support ecosystem. The vulnerable, children, the elderly, single mothers, the disabled, do not need a miracle. They just need a system strong enough to hold their hand when they stumble. But when that very system is weakening, there is no one left to support anyone. The city still has a budget. There are still media campaigns, million-dollar events, and promises in the press. But in the meantime, the small community programs, the ones that truly engage with the people, are the first to be cut. No explosions, no accident. It's just a city gradually extinguishing the small lights that once kept the community together. That circle, where those who once helped now need help, not only shows the fragility of each individual, it is a testament to a hard-to-swallow truth. We have let the community support system crumble without anyone truly noticing. So when the places that once held us together are being forgotten piece by piece, what still keeps this city standing? If a society is measured by how it treats its weakest members, then New York is standing in front of the mirror and must ask itself, what have we reflected? In a city once built on the idea of rising up, it is ironic that today New York is becoming a place where poverty is being reborn as an inescapable cycle. A system designed to help those in need get back on track now inadvertently pushes them back to the starting line. Time and time again. Imagine you just lost your home due to a sudden rent increase. You move into a temporary shelter where there is no privacy, no kitchen, and a limited stay duration. You try to apply for a job, but because you don't have a permanent address, your application gets rejected right from the first round. You turn to the assistance agency, but the paperwork requirements were lost when you were evicted from your old apartment. And so, you get stuck in a system that requires stability to receive help, but does not provide the opportunity to achieve stability. They call it institutionalized poverty, a form that no longer comes from a lack of personal effort, but from being surrounded by procedural barriers, prejudices, and the absence of trust. A 59-year-old man recounted, "I used to be a chef. When I lost my house, I also lost my ID and my bank account. There was nothing to prove who I once was. And since then, every job application, every resettlement request, every chance for recovery has slammed shut in front of him. But perhaps the biggest difference lies not in the spirit, but in the circumstances. Because the previous generation was supported to stand up. The current generation left at the bottom and then asked to swim on their own without a life raft. In some Nordic countries, the housing first model, providing stable housing first, then addressing employment and health, has shown clear results. But in New York, the policy still goes in the opposite direction, requiring you to prove your worthiness before receiving housing support. A demand that is both unreasonable and heartless, especially when someone has lost everything. We talk about the American dream as a path, but for the hundreds of thousands of homeless people in New York today, it is a locked door without a latch. You can see the light behind, but you can never reach it. And if a city continues to create people who cannot escape poverty, then blame them for not trying. It is no longer a fair society, but a failed recycling machine, dehumanizing despair. Why do we build a system that never lets them lift their heads? There was a time when the saying, "If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere," was a source of pride not only for New Yorkers, but for all of America. New York is not just a city. It is a symbol of resilience, opportunity, and rebirth. But standing in today's reality, we must honestly ask ourselves, is the collapse of New York's future still a hypothesis? Or is it quietly happening right beneath our feet? Walking through the streets from Harlem to the Lower East Side, from the affluent Upper West Side to the once vibrant residential areas of Queens, everywhere you see the signs of a city gradually hollowing out. Small businesses are closing permanently, and stores that have existed for generations now only display dilapidated "for lease" signs. People are leaving the city not because they want to, but because they can no longer afford to live here. They no longer choose New York. They are running away from it. The homelessness crisis is just the tip of a much deeper crack. The layered collapse of the protections that once kept this city sustainable. Affordable housing is disappearing. The public healthcare system is overloaded. Traffic is deteriorating. Long-established residential communities are being replaced by luxury, unoccupied buildings, bought as investments, not for living. And right in the midst of all that, there are hundreds of thousands of people quietly slipping out of the system, and no one bothers to look back. New York does not collapse with earthquakes. It collapses through millions of silent departures, of trust, of memory, of the feeling of this is home. When the people who once built New York no longer live here, does this place still remain New York? Not everyone leaves because they want to. Not everyone lives on the streets because they are lazy. Not everyone loses faith after just one stumble. But if New York, with all its resources, reputation, and legacy, cannot save the honest, hard-working people who once believed in it, then what is holding on to the faith in the rest of America? New York used to be a symbol of new beginnings, a place where, as long as you have the will, you will find a way. But today, that city is becoming a place where kind people are left behind, in silence, in invisibility, and in despair. The homelessness crisis is no longer the concern of a single group of people, a neighborhood, or a solitary policy. It is a mirror reflecting the fractures in the way we build, operate, and maintain a society that everyone once believed was fair. It does not come from a specific event, but from the small, repeated indifference over the years. And then, one day, when we open our eyes, the city has changed color, changed rhythm, changed its very soul. If you have ever witnessed, felt, or have a story to share, please leave a comment below. Your story can help awaken others, and who knows, bring about a small but meaningful change. And if what you've just seen makes you feel that something needs to be continued, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every small action is a way to keep this conversation going, instead of disappearing into silence like so many fates out there. The content in this video is built on publicly available data sources, real-life accounts, and social analyses. We do not represent any organization, government, or individual. The purpose of the video is to explore, raise awareness, and spark dialogue, not to attack or propagate.